first day of October. So getting into as you can see, getting into the spooky vibe. Um, Made this shirt this weekend with my Girl Scouts. We did tie dye. Some parts turned out better than others, but welcome everybody. Today I'm just going to be talking a little bit about how you make historic doll garments. I don't know that I'm going to actually sew much on camera today. I'm going to show some of the things I've made in the past. Um, Different eras and stuff like that. Not sure where my one of my Civil War gowns are. I think it's up in a box, but I have one from the like 1930s, one from uh the 1870s, and one from the uh 1890s. And right now I'm working on one from the 1850s. No, the one I have is not from the 1870s, it's from the 1830s. Sorry, I said that wrong. So, I like to do this normally primarily by trade. I am a bag maker. Um, Hence the reason I've written patterns and everything like that. I also make a lot of bags for customers and things like that. I just recently made a whole bunch of project bags. Actually, I can show you some of those I've made recently. Some stow and go I have made. I made a couple extra while I made some for a customer. So this is my stow and go pattern, which apparently I had a little bit of piece of thread. So I sent a bunch of these off to a customer, about 20 of them. So I have some of those that I made that I will have. I have a big market that I have in March that I'm starting to stockpile these for. But for as far as the historical doll patterns, it's sticking true to the actual construction from the time period, but on a mini scale. I have not made historical like adult clothing or children's clothing. I actually just like to do the um can't talk. I like to do the doll clothing because it's on a mini scale and I can learn new techniques and things like that. Ones I've made previously. Now this one is not on a doll, but I can show it off. This is a Civil War era gown. It's got a little bit of fuzz on it. This is a Civil War era gown. As you can see, it has teeny tiny gathers in the sleeve. It has what are termed undersleeves that are part of this. They can be made separately or as one thing. This is actually a finished piece. So this has this. Now you can do snaps or buttons with all clothing or Velcro as well. I prefer, it just depends. Some patterns call specifically for buttons and some call specifically for snaps. So this one calls for snaps. So even though on the back side it looks like buttons. So we have very fancy buttons on the back side, but what it is actually fastened with are snaps. Teeny tiny snaps. They are sew on snaps. So if you look on the inside, a lot of doll clothing is very meticulous. Just so things don't fray, you do a lot of zigzagging because you use such a small seam allowance. And a lot of doll clothing does have a lot of hand sewing. Welcome. So if you can see, now this particular dress had lots of pleats on the front. These are not gathers, these are pleats. And as you can see on the back, you can see the pleats on the back. And it had piping at the bodice. And we even have a teeny tiny brooch. Now that, like I said, that was Civil War era. Now, one other thing with historical doll clothing is that with any type of reproduction patterns, you would preferably like to use fabric from the same time period. This is reproduction fabric. I'm not sure who made this one particularly, but this is reproduction from the Civil War era. Now, this is one, as you see, and now that previous one I did win first place at the North Carolina State Fair as well. This is one from last year. This is the one I made last year. This is an 1830s gown. If you notice, we have pleats here. It is sewn pleats, and you pleat one side and then you pleat the other side. Now, this one actually has buttons, and it actually has little buttonholes. So teeny tiny buttons and teeny tiny buttonholes. But this has a gathered waist. Now we have trim. This is gimp trim. That's a 1/2 inch. Just adds that little bit of finesse to it. And so this is 1830s. You have the very fancy sleeves here that are pleated here. This is an 1880s gown. This one first place as well as best in show. Now, what's so interesting about this is this actually is, it looks like one complete dress. It actually is two pieces because that's how it's from. And this is from, I don't have her dress fastened all the way up, but um, as you can see, it has lots of pleats, not pleats, ruffles down the back. This is what's called a literary dress. And I don't have the correct undergarments. Normally, this is the time when you had what was called undergarment called a lobster tail that would basically make you have a more pronounced butt, but you would have it would be hang down here and it would make this pop up a little bit more. And but this is from the 1880s. Yet again, we have another one of these little brooches because those are very common in historical clothing. But as you can see, this is actually two pieces. This is a skirt that is gathered here all the way down. I do make all of these. I make mostly make bags, but I have made all of these doll dresses. And right now I'm working on my next one for to submit to the North Carolina State Fair for this year, which I'll turn in about 2 weeks. And I'm going to show what I'm for that in just a minute. But so this is from the 1880s. And like I said, undergarments make it. I couldn't find my petticoat. Oh, so I would have shown you that went my shift actually that went under those. So right now I'm working on an 1850s gown, a day dress. Specifically this one. This is from Kimberly Threads. And this is the gown I'm working on. I've not actually, thank you. Um, I've cut out the gown, but I have not started sewing the gown yet. But I have, I'm also going to make this petticoat to go under it, which is a corded petticoat, and it will make it where it'll stand out. The dress will stand out more. And to complete the outfit, you have what's called a spoon bonnet. But just to show you what it looks like, I have worked on the bonnet. It still needs its finishings, which are some ribbons, like you would wear the bonnet like this on your hat head. I'll show you on one of the dolls. And it will have a ribbon that will go down here and you tie it under their chin or under a chin. So just to show you what it looks like. This is what it will look like once I get the ribbon attached. And so that is the bonnet that will go with the gown. This is the material that I'm making the 1850s gown out of. Hi, Annette. So today I'm just talking about the historical doll pattern I'm working on. We're doing something a little different today. So this is what the spoon bonnet looks like. This is from Pemberley Threads. A lot of the patterns I've done previously are from Thimbles and Acorns, which is my favorite. But just to show you, this is what it looks like from the back, and I'm trying to figure out, this is not the doll it will be on. I'm trying to get a darker blonde or a maybe a redhead to go with this material. I don't really want it on a blonde or a dark brunette. So I have two ribbons I'm trying to decide on for the trim and the like necktie. So we have this one, and so the way this will work is that it will go around like this and it will tie under the chin. So I'm leaning towards the blue, but I also have this velvet ribbon in brown. So any opinions are greatly appreciated. But I have dolls that I dress up for these. Like I said, I've got an idea in my head of kind of what I want it to look like. But yes, this will have a ribbon of some type on it, but it has lace on the inside, and all of this is done. Actually, most of the hat is actually handwork. Like this is all slip stitched to the brim, is slip stitched to the brim, and then it has binding all the way around, and that is all hand done. And then lastly, I have added all this lace to really fancy up the hat, and that was all inserted by hand sewing. So, like I said, so what this will do is that my two options right now are going to be, that I haven't cut my ribbon because I hadn't decided which way I was going to go yet, but I'm kind of leaning towards the blue. Thank you. Like that. And so it would go down and tie under the doll's chin like that. Or if you were in the 1850s, you would tie, and different women would tie them, give them time in different directions. Sometimes they would do it right under their chin, sometimes to the side. They would also have feathers or other decorations in the hat, sometimes like birds or other things, just to class up the hat. Because your hats, you usually spent as much on your hat sometimes as you did the dresses. So, because you, a lot of times, um, that would be your decoration if you, especially if you were wearing a different gown, or if you were wearing like a police over your gown, your hat would be what would show. But now this is going to match the dress I'm making. I am doing the skirt of the dress. And as I said, I am making this day dress pattern. So this is a better image. So I'm making this day dress pattern. This has long sleeves, it has under sleeves. It also has a peroline, which is kind of like a shawl over it. So this is going to have, for the bodice and the sleeves, it's going to have this material. And these are materials from, I believe, Moda Fabrics from the civil. It's a Civil War era, which is 1850s, so that fits in that time period. From this is from Moda, and then we have the skirt. So if you to see the both together, this would be the bodice, and this will be the skirt, and the sleeves are going to be down like this. And I have a cream um, batiste for the undersleeves, and that's also what the petticoat is going to be made out of, is the batiste, a cream batiste. Now, I do plan on, as you can see here, there is a trim here. One thing I am doing is that I couldn't get the right color for the size trim that I wanted. So what I'm going to do is I have some Rit dye, and I'm going to play with the colors a little bit and see if I can get it to about match that. So I've got some cream trim. It's actually like a crocheted trim. So it is cotton, so it will take up the dye very well. The biggest thing with historical garments is that you don't want to use something like, say, the Grinch. You could, but if you're doing a historical garment, it's also teaching you how to make the different garments and the techniques that they use to make said garments. So, like, this is probably the this is like I said, this is from the Civil War era, 18. Excuse me. So we have this has itty bitty pleats. It has a ton of itty bitty pleats, not pleats, gathers here to add that little detail on the sleeve. And then it has edging right here to add even more dimension. Now, this is what's commonly called an undersleeve. Now, this is actually, well, come back again next week if you'd like to come back. I'll be sewing something else next week. Probably be working on my gamer's night out wallet because I'm hoping to adjust it for the new Switch too. Thank you, Annette. But yeah, this is a Civil War era dress, and so it is a little more somber in color, which was kind of routine for the day. We have the fancy belt. Did not have you could have a lot of times they would wear hoop skirts, and that would help poof it out some. Like I said, this is 1860s. And the biggest thing here is the fact this is not a new thing. I've done a lot of pleats before, but the sheer amount of pleats, you've got to think how many pleats would you do in an adult dress? How long would that take? I can tell you this took a week to sew this little itty bitty garment. Most of these take me anywhere between 3 and 3 days. Um, I have one more, and I think I know where it's at, and it's another Civil War era. Now I can show you this dress. This is a 1930 style dress. Hold on, let me get it up real quick. The belt came undone, so hold on just a second. Of course it did. But this is meant to go like on a dress. If you've ever seen the American Girl doll Kit, this is the time frame of Kit. In other words, Depression era. But I love learning about garments from other times. These, I usually sew one or two of these a year, just kind of as a brain break, and I enter them in every one I've entered, except for the one I'm about to show you has one. This one won second place. This is a 1930s era, if it's Velcro, right? And see, now this one I did with Velcro instead of buttons or snaps. This is a 1930s era gown, that little Peter Pan collar. I said it's not as detailed as some of the others I've shown. So I said, but things were simpler. Welcome. I do have so undergarments. I do have a few. I did actually find them. Now these are pantaloons. So very or what they were is underwear. Very simple, elastic legs and waist. And a lot of times in actual historical time periods, they would just have a slit there for using the bathroom. Now, this is what a shift, this is what was worn under most garments and what actually they would sleep in a lot of times. Um, this would be what would be bottom layer under everything else, and you would just stack it on top of that. So this is a shift. So it's very simple. I can go see, I can grab one more. I think I know where it's at real quick. So the big thing with historical garments, like I said, is to um, try to get historical based fabric. There are several companies out that do them, such as Marcus Brothers and Moda does some. Um, there's some called Blackbird Fabrics has done some in the past. It just depends what they do. But Marcus Brothers is probably the most well known for his historical based fabrics. Let me grab this real quick. Gotta when things are above your head. I have a box of garments and things I've made before. Okay, it's not in there, so not gonna search more than that. It's not where I thought it was, so who knows where it's at the moment. But I have most of the ones I've made that are historical based. Um, like I said, there are different. It's just like I said, I enjoy learning different techniques. I love sewing with tiny things, so that helps some too. Um, with this, like this one's kind of interesting. I'm making this petticoat to actually hold out my skirt. And the way you do it is that you actually start sewing, you sew your hem, you fold up, fold under your hem, then fold it up and make casings for the cords all the way up. And then you add cord all the way up, which is kind of neat. And that also provides that structure and the um, thing for that. So, but just to show, a lot of times I do have very simple black shoes because there are patterns out there for period clothes for period shoes. I have not gone into shoemaking yet. I plan to try for next year because next year, since tomorrow next year is the 250th year of the um of our nation, 1776, 2026. I plan on trying to do George Washington and Martha. I actually have patterns for both, and I'm going to do a full um military uniform of George Washington, the blue and gold and white with the cravat and everything like that. And I'm going to do a forenu gown for Martha, which was the type of fancy gown of the time, same time frame, 1770s. So h- George will be a younger George. It's not going to be older George because I'm not going to powder his hair. So he will have hair. And I have found me a George that has brown hair, and I'm looking forward to dressing him up. And it's going to be a younger Martha as well. I said they both lived into the 1790s, but I want to make sure I have enough to do that. But I'm going to do that. So, but yeah, so this was actually one that's from the 1830s, right after the Regency area, before the ginormous sleeves came in from the late 1830s into the 1840s, came into fashion. Hope so. I think it'll be really interesting, and I'll update because I'll probably be working on it for the next year because it's a lot of working. And the big thing is with doll dresses is that they take a lot of time commitment. Like I've spent like 2 days doing nothing but a hat. So, but that's because a lot of this is put together by hand stitching. Since you're here, Annette, why don't you tell me your opinion on the hat with what ribbon? I have a velvet brown ribbon, and this will be, hold on, let me pull it down a little bit. So, what this goes is it will go here and it will be gathered up here at the crown and down here at the neck, and it would be tied under. So, we have it with brown, and this is a brown velvet ribbon. And then I have a not quite navy blue, it's more like a Williamsburg blue. It matches the blue in the plaid. And this is the other ribbon. So we have that, and I think I kind of like how that looks. And it will be sewn down. It's not just going to sit there. But we have the. I think I'm leaning towards the blue. You'll have a nice, pretty big bow under the chin of the doll, and I'm leaning either a um, dark blonde or dirty blonde haired doll, so a lot darker than this one, or a redhead doll to really offset the fabric. Because, like I said, it is plaid. It is more somber, but you got to think this is 1850s. You didn't have tons and tons of colors. You had some, but this was a day dress. A day dress is something you would wear all the time. You would wear out. You would go walking in it. This is not a. You would usually put more of your price point or expensive fabrics into a um, evening gown, or one you would wear to balls or for like courting and stuff like that. So, like I said, this is going to have. Um, it is this gown that is going to go with. And just to show you the whole outfit, so this is how it will look. But so is this outfit, and I like I said, this is gonna be the bodice and sleeves. So if you can see, it has the really big exaggerated sleeves right here, and it's gonna have that trim there. And this is a pearline or like a shawl. And this is the skirt. So if that helps picture that a little bit more, this will be the bodice, and then this skirt, and the pearline or the shawl will be over it, will also be this plaid. And now, when you're sewing with plaids, one thing you have to make sure is that if you have any seams that connect, that your plaids match up. Which actually, I just had to recut a couple pieces because I realized my plaids did not match up. So I had to cut me like three new pieces. Luckily, they were little, like, square pieces. Sounds good to me. I mean, the brown ribbon looks good, but if I go too pale with the hair and with the doll, it's gonna just be kind of blah. And I have trim that's supposed to be here. I have some trim that arrived today. I don't know if it's the one I'm going to do for my final test or not, but I have some fringe that is about, well, it's an inch wide, but I'm actually going to trim down to a half an inch, and that will be my trim around the all the edging of the dress. But I'm actually going to. I've got two different colors of blue Rit dye that I'm going to figure out to get the best color for, and I'm gonna try to get it as close to this blue as I can. So I've got denim and indigo blue. Indigo was very common in that time frame, so I just have to see how it does. I have a cotton fringe. I also have something coming from Hobby Lobby that is a half inch crocheted lace trim that, if I like it better when it actually arrives, that's the one I'll use instead. But I'm probably going to play with dyeing both of them to see. And so that's something you can do with, especially when you're doing on mini scale for dolls. You have to sometimes improvise by dyeing it to the color that you want. Um, that's the biggest thing with doll things, is that not everything is everything's usually sewn completely with a quarter-inch seam allowance. You can use snaps, you can use um, Velcro, you can use buttons. Now, what's gonna a Velcro is not gonna be as pristine looking because period dresses did not Velcro was not invented in the 1800s. So snaps were used in both adult clothing and that period, but buttons would be more common. Um, like I said, I've done both. Like I said, this one here is a button dress. If you can see, it has buttons, and it also has snaps on the waist band of this skirt. Um, so I have a little combination of both for this one, and this one has a what you would call a undergarment, but it is not does not go fully to a full lining. So if I were to look in here, there is not a full. It's not fully lined, whereas this dress, the bodice is completely and utterly fully lined, and the bodice arms I can actually tell you were slip stitched by hand. So there is a lot of handwork in a doll garment versus a um, child's or adult historical, but you still will have a lot of sewing in because if you're looking for it to be pristine without all the stitching showing, you're going to do the hand stitching. Like I said, this is almost, I'd say, about 75% sewn, 75 to 80% sewn by hand. And as you can see, you can't see my stitches. Like the crown was completely slip stitched to the brim, and the lace was completely hand stitched. Started out at the top and went back and gathered it through the bottom, and that gives it that nice, pretty, fancy up of the bonnet. So right now, I'm still kind of getting everything pieced together. My next thing to put together is actually the petticoat so that it'll hang right. Then I'm going to put the dress together, work on the undersleeve. Now, this one has something that was common. It actually has the undersleeves that are separate from the dress, and it has ties. You would take it up your arm and you would tie it on your arm. So, this part right here. So, if you can see, this part right here, it is actually a completely separate garment. And that was not uncommon that you would tie your sleeves on and then they would be covered up by other parts of the dresses or um I said this one looks like one piece, but it's actually two pieces put together and you would have a chemise, and with this particular fashion you would have a lobster tail to poof out the back with all those ruffles down the back. So are there any questions? Just to show you, not to show the pattern, but if you can see, you can see ties here where you actually tie the garment onto the arm, all, or in this case, you could also do it for a person. You tie the arm sleeves on and then you fasten it down at the wrist with a snap or a button. I like doing historical garments every so often because they are, it teaches me some new things I've not learned before. Sometimes. Um, let's just say we won't talk about how much of that with this with this sheer amount of lace that this had. I had to finish the and then attach the um, lace to it, and then I folded it down and top stitched it. So it takes time. Like I said, you have little details like lace on the sleeves matches the lace down here, and it just depends. This is batiste. Usually for undergarments, you use batiste, which is a very, very thin material. It's what you see a lot of like christening gowns made out of. Very, very thin, very fun. It feels wonderful to be on. Like you'll see a lot of smocked dresses made out of batiste, but like this is batiste. So this is a very thin. Another type of material would be lawn. Um, so and so this is a very shift. That this is actually what you would wear under a petticoat, and then whatever other undergarments, like a corset or everything like that, this would be your bottom layer with other things built on top of it. I said it makes you stay a little focused if you're going to be talking, doing a lot of this. You have to stay detail focused to be able to go, I need to do this, this, and this, but in this order so that I can make sure everything's done at the same time. He said, I have about a week and a half to get this finished. I'm pushing a little more than I wanted to, but next year's I'll be working on it all through the year just so I can make sure I'm done because just doing George Washington shirt with the lacy cravat is gonna be interesting. Let's put it that way. And he has like 20 gold buttons because it's the military regalia uniform. So, and he'll have the little tricorn hat and things like that. Yes, this is going into the North Carolina State Fair. This one won in doll costume last year. This one won first place, as you can see. Um, like I said, almost all of mine have gotten first place. This is the one I'm most proud of because it won first place and best in show, which was really kind of cool. Um, I like entering into the sewing contest. My bags usually I enter them in, and sometimes I enter some garments for my younger daughter. Her Easter dresses, which are a little fancier than most of my dresses and stuff. Um, Sometimes I enter a knit garment, things like that. I enjoy sewing to. It's kind of just validation of my own skills sometimes. So, plus, I enjoy doing it. And like I said, this is kind of I've been swamped lately with orders. This is my brain break. Oh, it's fine, Melody. Like I said, I've just been talking about what you have to take into account with historical doll sewing. I said, this is the one I'm working on right now. And you'll be able to rewatch it. Talking about how you use different garments. I've spent most of the last 2 days sewing this, all that hand stitching. Um, I showed a couple of the others I've sewn. This was the one I did last year for the state fair, which is an 1830s. Um, it's based off of a historical figure called Sarah Hale, but it has the pleated top and the pleated sleeves. And then I showed this one that I did 2 years ago. This one won Best in Show a couple years back and has lots of ruffles of all different types and shapes. This is actually gathered on the front here. So if you can see the very front, this is actually made of like three parts. This is gathered, so you have the pulls up here that are gathered, and that's specifically made to do that. And then you actually stitch down the gathers to hold them. And then it has all the lovely ruffles in the back. For the skirt part, this is actually two separate pieces. And if I had had time that year, I would have made a lobster tail to go under it to fit the time frame. And this is a Civil War era. That one is the 1880s or 1870s literary dress from Thimbles and Acorns. This is a Civil War. Uh, this is one I did um, about 5 or 6 years ago. It's been a while. Um, and so you have all those nice pleats. You have gathers in the sleeves, and just talking about different things, talking about what things make it historical. Yeah, I like thimbles and acorns. I actually was saying that next year I plan on doing the George Washington and Martha Washington. Well, I'm actually doing the George Washington military regalia uniform for the 250th anniversary. and I'm going to do the forenoon gown, which is from the 1770s, which Martha Washington would have worn, um, and make a Martha Washington to go with George Washington. Um, so as far as all that goes, but to enter that in for the 250th year of our nation for next year. But so far, this is what I have. I have everything cut out, and then I have the hat made. Other than putting the ribbon on, I just need to figure out ribbon color and all that. Um, I've decided to go with a blue ribbon, and my next thing is to actually dye some uh, trim to get the right color to match this color blue, which is the same blue in this plaid. I'm guessing it takes a lot of work. I know it takes a lot of materials, but it's called a Sashu Fornu gown. That's the 1770s. Me and that placemat are having issues, so I decided to go with the uh well, I got the pattern pieces cut out, but my brain was not wanting to think on a straw placemat, so I do have one cut out of straw. We'll see if I go past that. But I like how this turned out, so I'm not unhappy. I think I stared at the straw placemat after I got it cut out and went, okay, how am I gonna do this? So that's where we're at on that regards. Nothing wrong with that. It's just more like, hmm, I don't know. So I'll think on that some more for later and experiment it with it then when I'm not on more of a time crunch. So what I've got left is due to the corded petticoat and the dress. But yeah, I'm very happy with it. I've got to take it and put it before I put the ribbon on. I need to take my ham and press it. So, but yeah, I like how I got the lace all laid down. Lots of handwork though. And I found the perfect lace for that. That is very period. And this is from a Civil War collection from Moda, actually. Civil War era reproduction fabric. As I told them for that day dress, this is going to be the skirt and also the peroline, but the bodice and sleeves, the long um, sleeves are going to be that. So that will be together just like I made this the lining of the hat. So I think that's going to look really well together. They're both from the same uh, line of fabric from Moda. So I'm really glad how that's turning out. So that's the big things for that I was going over and saying. Like made other little shifts before in little pantaloons. So I've made undergarments before. I actually have like corset and stays that did never got made for the Civil War era dress because I ran out of time. This time the petticoat seems simple enough that I'll probably be able to do that in a day, and then I'll be able to spend the rest of my time on my dress. I could see that, but all right. Well, that's going to be it for tonight. Like I said, I'm just trying to figure out everything I'm doing. Like I said, I'm doing the plaid. The biggest thing with like plaids is when you have seams, you want to make sure your plaids match up so you don't see any difference in the material. So that's the biggest thing. So, but I will see y'all next week. I'm hoping to be able to get a new gamers night out. Um, Figured out for the Switch 2 if I have time, and I will get one cut out and I will sew it with y'all either next week. I might be finishing up the style dress, or I may be starting that, but definitely the following week we will start the gamers night out. Um, Going over tutorial on how to do that for since we're getting into Christmas season. I know some people will be getting a Switch too for Christmas, and it's nice to be able to make them a case to go with it. And when that comes, I will make a pattern add-on for the gamers night out to showcase for the Nintendo Switch too. But I will see y'all next week. And like I said, either we'll be doing doll dress or gamers night out. I don't know yet. And I'll post that closer to time. So I will see y'all next week. Bye.